The snow in Vancouver doesn't fall clean. It comes down gray and heavy, catching the light from the diners and the pawn shops and the late-night pharmacies, and by the time it hits the pavement, it's already dirty. Bridget Hale had worked the closing shift at Harlow's Diner on Hastings Street for 3 years, and she knew every sound that neighborhood made after midnight. She knew the sound of the SkyTrain pulling away. She knew the sound of the couple in the apartment above the laundromat fighting again. She knew the sound of a city that had stopped pretending to care about the people it had chewed up and forgotten. What she did not know, what she could not have prepared for, not in 3 years, not in 30, was the sound a child makes when they are trying very hard not to cry and failing. She heard it before she saw him, a boy, maybe 9, maybe 10, crumpled against the concrete base of a bus shelter on the corner of Hastings and Clark, his blazer soaked through, one arm pressed against his ribs in the careful way that meant something underneath had broken. His face was pale and tight, and very, very still. The kind of stillness children learn when they've been taught that making noise is dangerous. Bridget Hale was 22 years old, and she made $11 an hour plus tips, and she had exactly $47 in her bank account, and she had a bus to catch. She walked toward the boy anyway. If you're just joining us at Ella's Romance Library, welcome. Stay with me. This one is going to break your heart before it puts it back together. Hey. She crouched down in front of him, ignoring the slush soaking into the knees of her uniform trousers. Hey, sweetheart, can you look at me? The boy looked up. His eyes were dark and very serious and wet at the corners, but his chin was steady. He had the face of a child who had been told many times to be strong. Are you hurt? He nodded, just barely. Okay, she kept her voice even. Okay, that's all right. Can you tell me your name? A long pause. Then quietly, Theo. She smiled at him. I'm Bridget. I work in the diner right there. See the yellow sign? I've got a first aid kit inside and I'm going to get you warmed up, okay? Can you stand? He tried. He made it halfway up before the pain caught him and he went white at the edges of his lips. Bridget caught him without thinking, one arm around his back, taking his weight. It's okay. I've got you. I've got you. She half carried him inside, past the empty counter and the booth where old Dennis always left his newspaper, and sat him down in the back booth where the heating vent blew warm. She brought him hot chocolate, the real kind, not the powder, and she wrapped a clean dish towel around his hands. And then she found the phone. It had slipped out of his blazer pocket and onto the booth seat. A phone that cost more than Bridget Hale's entire month of rent. Matte black, no case, already unlocked, and on the screen a single contact displayed above a missed call notification. The contact name was 2 letters, NV. Below it, in smaller text, if I don't answer, try this one first. She looked at Theo. He was watching her with those serious dark eyes, the hot chocolate wrapped in both hands, and something shifted in his face when he saw what she was holding. Something that looked a great deal like fear, but not for himself. You should call, he said quietly. He'll be looking. Bridget Hale pressed the call button. The line rang once. It rang twice. On the 3rd ring, a voice answered that she would spend a long time trying to forget. The voice was low and even and utterly without warmth. Not a question, a statement, an expectation. Bridget's mouth was dry. This isn't Theo, she said. My name is Bridget Hale. I found a boy with his phone on Hastings Street. He's hurt. I think his ribs might be cracked. Silence, not the silence of surprise. The silence of a man who was already thinking 12 steps ahead and deciding which ones to take. Where are you? The voice said. Not is he all right? Not what happened. Just where are you? She told him. She hung up. She sat across from Theo in the yellow light of Harlow's Diner, and she told herself that she had done the right thing, and she believed it right up, until the moment 4 black SUVs pulled up outside, and a man stepped out who did not look like any kind of father she had ever seen. His name, though she wouldn't learn it until much later, was Nicholas Varro. He was 41 years old. He was 6'2", and he wore a dark wool coat that had cost more than some people's cars, and he moved through the door of the diner with the particular kind of quiet that belongs to men who have never, in their adult lives, walked into a room and wondered if they were safe, because they are never the ones in danger. Everyone else is. He came straight to the back booth. He looked at Theo with eyes that Bridget could not read. Not cold, not warm, just calculating, the way a man looks at something precious that he has nearly lost and is rapidly counting the cost of that nearness. He crouched down to the boy's level and he said something very quietly in what sounded like Croatian, and Theo answered in the same language, and something shifted almost imperceptibly in the man's face. Then he stood up and he looked at Bridget Hale. She was still in her uniform. She had a grease stain on her left cuff that she hadn't managed to get out. Her hair was doing the thing it always did after a double shift, which was escaping from its tie in approximately 11 different directions. She was holding a dish towel. "You found him," Nicholas Varro said. "On the corner," she said. He was trying not to cry. He wasn't very good at it. Something moved behind the man's eyes. There and gone. "How long was he there?" "I don't know. I came out at 12:30. He could have been there before that. Did anyone approach him?" "Before you?" Bridget thought about it. "There was a car," she said slowly. "I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was parked across the street. Silver. It pulled away when I brought him inside." The man's jaw tightened. It was a very small movement, the kind of movement that probably meant something significant to the people who worked for him. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Come with us." Bridget blinked. "Sorry?" "The car that was watching. They saw you bring him in. They saw your face." He said it the way he might say it is raining outside. "Just weather. Just fact. You're not safe here tonight." "I'm a waitress," she said. "Nobody is going to. Ems Hale." He said her name like he'd already known it. "I don't make requests twice." Two of the men by the door moved. If you're watching this and you're thinking, "Wait, should she have run? Should she have screamed?" Leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Because I think about it too. I think about that moment, the dish towel in her hands, the men by the door, the boy with the hot chocolate. I think about what it means to make a choice when the choice has already been made for you. They put her in the middle SUV, not the front, and they drove west and then south, and then through a gate she didn't see until they were already past it. The house, and house was not the right word, not really, but she didn't have a better one, was on the waterfront. Point Grey. The kind of neighborhood where the streets were so quiet you could hear the ocean. She was brought into a room with high ceilings and a fireplace that was already burning and bookshelves that covered every wall, and she sat in a chair that probably cost more than all her furniture combined, and she waited. A woman came first, mid-50s, silver hair, reading glasses hanging on a chain around her neck, the housekeeper, or something like it. She brought tea without asking. She looked at Bridget's uniform, at the grease stain on the cuff, and something flickered in her expression that might have been sympathy. "He won't be long," the woman said. "His name is Mrs. Ardell if you need anything." "His name?" Bridget said. The woman paused. "Mr. Varro, he's particular about things." "About what things?" Mrs. Ardell looked at her steadily. "About people who help the people he loves," she said. "He doesn't forget. That's all I'll say." She left. Bridget drank her tea and tried not to look too hard at the oil paintings on the walls and the framed photographs on the mantelpiece. One of which, she noticed, showed a woman and a small dark-haired boy on a boat somewhere very warm and blue, both of them laughing. The woman clearly gone from this house in the only way that matters. Nicholas Varro came in 20 minutes later. He had changed his coat for a shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked different this way. Not softer, exactly, but more present, like a man instead of a silhouette. He sat down in the chair across from her. "Theo is with the doctor," he said. "2 cracked ribs. Minor concussion." "What happened to him?" A pause. "He was taken from school this afternoon. We recovered him at 6. He escaped on his own before we reached him, ran 6 blocks before he collapsed." Something moved in his face. "He's 9 years old." Bridget set down her tea. "Taken by whom?" "People who want to send me a message, and the message is..." He looked at her directly. "That nothing I love is beyond their reach." The fire popped. Outside, the ocean made its steady sound against the rocks below the house, indifferent and ancient and ongoing. "Why am I still here?" Bridget asked. "You said I wasn't safe at the diner tonight. Is that still true tomorrow?" Nicholas Varro was quiet for a moment. "The men in the silver car," he said. "They took a photograph of you carrying my son inside. They will want to know who you are. They will find out." He said it without apology. "That is my fault, not yours." Okay, she said. You understand what I'm saying. I understand that a situation I had nothing to do with is now something I'm involved in, she said. I understand that you're the reason. Yes. He looked at her differently then, like something had clarified, like he'd been watching a shape in fog, and it had finally resolved into something with edges. I'll protect you, he said. You have my word, with respect, Bridget Hale said. I don't know what your word is worth. And for the first time, just briefly, just for a second, something crossed his face that might have been the beginning of a smile. No, he said. You don't. Yet. She didn't go home that night. She was given a room, clean, spare, overlooking the water, and she lay on top of the covers in her uniform, because she had nothing else, and she listened to the ocean, and tried to understand how her life had changed shape so completely between midnight and 2 in the morning. She thought about the $47 in her bank account. She thought about the $11 an hour job she had probably just walked away from. She thought about Theo's face in the yellow light of the diner, his chin steady, trying so hard to be brave. She thought, I would do it again. In the morning, a bag appeared outside her door with clothes in her size. She didn't ask how they knew. She got dressed and went downstairs and found Theo sitting at the kitchen island in pajamas, eating cereal, looking very small and very serious, a white bandage wrap visible at the edge of his collar. He saw her and his face did something complicated. You stayed, he said. I'm still figuring out how to leave, she said honestly. He considered this. My father doesn't usually let people stay. Your father didn't really give me a choice. Theo looked at his cereal. Then, quietly, the lady who found me before. Last time, she called the police and then she left. He said it without accusation, just as information. You didn't leave. Bridget sat down on the stool across from him. Last time, she said carefully. This is the second time someone's tried to take me, Theo said, with the calm of a child who has processed a terrible thing by reducing it to facts. The first time I was 7, a different group. My father, he paused. My father made sure it didn't happen again. But this group is different. They're smarter. Who are they? Theo looked at her. You'd have to ask him. He doesn't tell me everything. He thinks he's protecting me. A pause. He thinks protecting me means not letting me know the things that might hurt me. He doesn't understand that not knowing is worse. Bridget looked at this 9-year-old boy and thought, you are going to be extraordinary, and it is going to cost you something significant. I'll talk to him, she said. Theo looked up. I'm not promising anything, she said, but I'll talk to him. She found Nicholas Varro in the study. He was on the phone, speaking in clipped, quiet sentences that carried the weight of instructions, not conversation. He saw her in the doorway and held up one finger. Wait, and finished the call and set the phone down. They've identified the car, he said before she could speak. Registered to a numbered company with ties to Anatole Bresser. I don't know who that is. He runs the waterfront operations that I took over in 2019. He's been patient. I underestimated him. He said it evenly, the way someone admits a chess mistake. That won't happen again. Theo told me this is the second time, Bridget said. A slight pause. Yes, he said you don't tell him things to protect him. He's 9. He knows anyway. He just fills in the gaps with his imagination, which is probably worse. She stopped. Sorry. You didn't ask for parenting advice from someone who makes $11 an hour. You're right, Nicholas Varro said. Not defending himself. Not dismissing her. Just, you're right. She hadn't expected that. Bresser's people know who I am now, she said. What does that actually mean? Practically? It means they will try to use you. To find out what you know, what you saw. To pressure me. He paused. You are collateral damage they didn't plan for. That makes you unpredictable to them, which makes you valuable and also dangerous. I'm a waitress from Hastings Street. I don't know anything. They don't know that. Bridget was quiet for a moment. What do you need from me? He seemed surprised by the question, genuinely surprised, which she hadn't thought was possible. Stay, he said, for now, until we've dealt with Bresser. You'll be safe here. And Theo? Theo is, yes. Theo would be. He stopped, started again. Theo doesn't trust easily. He trusted me, she said. He called me the waitress who didn't leave. I think that's about as high as his praise goes. The corner of Nicholas Varro's mouth did the thing it had almost done the night before. It is, he said. She stayed. She told herself it was practical. She told herself she had nowhere safer to go, which was true. She told herself it had nothing to do with Theo's serious dark eyes, or the photograph on the mantelpiece, or the way Nicholas Varro had said, "You're right," without flinching. But those were the things she kept returning to, in between. On the second day, Mrs. Ardell taught her where everything was in the kitchen. On the third day, Theo showed her the telescope in his room that pointed toward the strait, and he told her with great precision the names and histories of 6 cargo ships currently visible on the water. On the fourth day, Bridget caught Nicholas Varro watching his son explain the ships to her from the doorway, with an expression on his face that the rest of the world never got to see. And on the fifth day, Bresser made his move. They came at night. They were not subtle about it. But then, Bridget learned later, they weren't supposed to be. The noise was the point. The chaos was the point. Breach the perimeter, draw Varro's men outward, create a gap in the center of the house. Bridget Hale was in the kitchen when the lights went out. She heard it before she understood it. A concussive thud somewhere on the south side of the property, and then the emergency lighting cutting on in long red strips along the baseboards, and then the sound of the security door at the back of the house not locking the way it was supposed to. Theo was upstairs. She didn't stop to think about it. She moved through the dark, with the red emergency light guiding her, and she took the stairs 2 at a time, and she pushed open Theo's door, and he was already awake, already on his feet, already reaching for the emergency bag that his father had clearly taught him to keep under his bed, because this was not his first time. "There's a panic room," he said, "behind the bookcase in my father's study. Do you know how to? Show me." They moved through the dark hallway, Theo leading, his hand in hers, and she felt him trembling, but his feet were steady. They had almost reached the study when the figure appeared at the end of the hall. A man, not one of the household security. Wrong jacket, wrong stance. He saw them. He moved. Bridget did not make a decision so much as her body made it for her. She stepped in front of Theo, grabbed the hall table lamp, heavy, ceramic, not subtle, and threw it with everything she had. It caught the man across the shoulder. He stumbled. She pulled Theo sideways into the study, slammed the door and held it. "The bookcase," she said. "Which one?" "Third from the window. Pull the second shelf." She pulled. Something clicked. The bookcase swung inward, and she pushed Theo inside, and she followed, and the door sealed shut behind them. And then it was dark and quiet, and the world outside was muffled to almost nothing. Theo was shaking. She put her arm around him, and he pressed his face against her shoulder, and for the first time since she'd found him on the street, he was not trying to be brave. "It's okay," she said. "It's okay. Your dad is going to." "I know," Theo said, muffled. "I know he will. I hate this part." "Yeah," she said. "Me too." They sat in the dark for 17 minutes. Bridget counted. At minute 18, the panel beside the door lit up, and a code was entered from outside, and the door opened, and Nicholas Varro was standing there with a cut above his eyebrow that was bleeding significantly more than he seemed to be acknowledging, and his eyes went immediately, without hesitation, to his son, then to her, then back to his son. He crouched down and he said something in Croatian, and Theo answered, and then Nicholas Varro, who had walked into a diner on Hastings Street like weather, like inevitability, like a man who had never in his life been uncertain of anything, put both arms around his son and held him for a long moment and said nothing at all. Bresser was arrested 6 days later. It wasn't Varro who made the call. It was a package of financial records, surveillance photographs, and signed testimonies from 3 former Bresser employees that arrived anonymously at the Vancouver Police Department's Organized Crime Division. Where those materials came from, the official report did not specify. Bridget learned later that 2 of those testimonies were obtained in the week following the break-in. She learned later that Nicholas Varro had a relationship with certain members of the Organized Crime Division that was, as Mrs. Ardell put it, not exactly adversarial. She was free to go, he told her. On a Wednesday morning in December, the snow coming down heavy and gray over the water. She was free to go, and he would ensure she had money enough to find a better apartment, a better job, a situation that did not involve grease stains and double shifts and $47 at the end of the month. She was standing at the front door with the bag Mrs. Ardell had packed for her. Theo was sitting on the bottom stair, still in his pajamas, watching her with those dark, serious eyes. "You could stay," he said. "Not a request, just information." "Theo, you don't have anywhere specific to be," he said. "You mentioned that. The diner isn't an emergency. You could stay." Bridget looked at Nicholas Varro, who was standing at the edge of the hallway with his hands in his pockets, looking at somewhere around the middle distance, very carefully, not saying anything. "What would I even do here?" she said. "You could be here," Theo said, as if this were obvious. "That's a thing that you could do." She set the bag down. Nicholas Varro looked at her then. A look she would come to know very well. Not warm, not cold, just present. Just "I see you, just I remember that you didn't leave. Stay for dinner," he said. "We can discuss the rest," she repeated. "There are," he said carefully, "arrangements that could be made. For someone who is no longer unknown to certain people, safer arrangements, if she were willing." Outside, the snow fell on the gray Pacific water. "For dinner?" she said. He nodded. She didn't pick up the bag again. "And here's what I want to leave you with, before you go. Because this story isn't really about a mafia boss. And it isn't really about a waitress. And it isn't really about a boy with cracked ribs on a street in the snow. It's about the moment when a person has every practical reason to keep walking, and they stop anyway. It's about what we owe each other when no one is asking us for anything." Bridget Hales stopped. Everything else followed from that. If this story got into you the way it got into me, hit that like button. Subscribe to Ella's Romance Library if you're new here, because we tell stories like this one every week. And tell me in the comments, at which moment would you have left? The phone call? The SUVs outside? The man in the hallway? Or would you have stayed?